All right, let's rewrite history. Click the links to support my vitally important work. I want to start a spiritual retreat, lady boy militia, somewhere in the woods of Idaho. So I figure $1 million can get me some tents, hot cocoa, and lube. So hit up that coffee app. What do you do when it's 1984 and the parasites literally write you out of existence? They say dead naming a trans is denying his existence, but what about actually changing history to further marginalize and oppress an English woman, to actually deny her existence? How authoritarian is that? But the rules never seem to apply when the commies are in charge. Oh, and speaking of current events, that white rice lasts decades, so it's probably not the worst idea to have a few 100 pounds on hand, just the FYI. So calling someone by the right pronoun, the biologically accurate pronoun, apparently now is a crime against God, which I would never do because I will lie to your face if it makes you happy. But burning down a neighborhood is reparations. So think how insulting it is to race swap a character. You take an Englishman who accomplished something very cool, then in the story you swap them out from someone from another country who didn't accomplish that great deed. It's like every kid who wins a participation prize, but like maybe when they're young enough they think it's cool to get a ribbon, but then the older kids kind of look at them and roll their eyes, and when they get a little older, they all of a sudden it hits them. It's like they just throw those ribbons away because they know they're freaking worthless. If you're unfamiliar with this story, she was an 18th century boxer in London who they race swapped. In her book, the author describes her saying she's the most venerated female pugilist in British history. So you're taking something uniquely British people, the British tribe, the British story, and you just spit in their face. Her story has been adapted by Legendary Comics in the recently released Champions graphic novel. However, they decided to reimagine her as half Indian. Wow, what a surprise there. And Legendary Comics is owned by Legendary Films, which was owned by this guy Tull, who's literally a billionaire. I'm not too sure what his story is. But the Legendary Films sold out to a Chinese, so they're a subsidiary of some Chinese company. So I'm not sure what their deal is. I don't know what their deal with the Baizu question type of thing is. So a press release from Legendary Comics reads, Champion is based on the true story of Elizabeth Wilkinson. Okay, well, right there we have a problem. A female bare-knuckle boxer in 18th century London. So again, a uniquely English story, real English people. Except they reimagined her, an actual person, as something she's not, a half Indian. And she and her sister struggle to make ends meet. Here's the thing: there's no white privilege. That's just a Bolshevik lie. That Leon Trotsky, Leon Bernstein, those are lies. It's all just critical race theory. That's just Marxism. It's a lie. They're brainwashing you. It's complete bullshit from the start. It's a manipulative technique by the worst people on earth. There's only green privilege. There's only money. And 150 years ago, 200 years ago in England, there was only upper class privilege. You weren't white or anything else. You were either upper class or you were starving. Like England had a lot of good and bad things going for it. Like they accomplished a lot, but they definitely had a caste system. And if you were in the underclass, like it was brutal to be in a city. You had some of the worst poverty on earth. So having this, later on they talk about being Indian boxer in a white male society. It's like, no. It's not a white male society. It's an English society with a hierarchy. And if you were poor, English at the bottom, you were nothing. You would starve to death. I mean, there were people like, how do you think Australia got started? There were people who were literally starving who would steal bread and get sent to Australia. Anyway, this kind of thing, this kind of race swapping, it doesn't make sense because you end up insulting both tribes of people. The English are not Indians. They're different people. Different people are different. Don't pretend for a minute that this is not done for a nefarious purpose. Even the most asleep normie knows that this is dark and getting darker. Of course, we have to be careful on YouTube, which sucks because YouTube used to be a lot of fun. What they did here is just take an actual person and wipe her out of existence because she's poor in English. Think how insanely racist that is and deeply creepy and hateful. They took the accomplishments of an English person away and gave it to a fictional Indian. I keep explaining that this is part of the globalist humiliation ritual, and I know it sounds a little bit tinfoil hat to keep repeating that, but I'm not taking crazy pills here. There's overwhelming evidence of this kind of stuff, and I'm like, I pretty well dog whistle in every other video, kind of obviously. I mean, you should know what's going on by now. I could do a comic video or a pop culture video on this type of stuff like every other day, but people aren't into it. Like every day getting hit over the head with this kind of thing, and eventually YouTube would catch on and they would just show me the door. But I feel like waking up normies is my mission on social media for as long as I'm on it. So I do feel like I'm on a mission from God. And Gab has been getting more normies who, for whatever reason, are leaving Twitter. And it has been a chore on Joker pilling them, which I hope to God I never see another Trump meme as long as I live. The description continues. While Elizabeth, the English girl who has been literally genocided digitally out of existence, works odd jobs, local newspaper, only way to survive is make enough money to help them survive as a true person. So instead of taking the English person as the point of your sympathy and empathy to humanize the English, you just wipe that away. Because the people who are funding this kind of stuff can't have you humanize the English. Like, here's the thing with this, this spring is, or the pendulum, it's swinging one way, and these people are just swinging it so far that when it swings back, it's going to swing back. With Tessa's support, she trains at a boxing facility of one of the most famous retired boxers, and only real right from blah, blah, blah. Conclusion, as Elizabeth trains with Figs and James Stokes, she confronts her personal demons of what destroyed her family and comes to term with being a first half Indian female boxer in a English man's world. Except she's not a half Indian female boxer. She's English in an English world, but the difference is that she's poor English. And it's like they do it to the Irish. They just ignore the Irish, or they ignore the Eastern Europeans. They're the horrible conditions that they had under communism, or the Mediterranean Europeans, the horrible conditions they had under Islam for 800 years. It's like they just ignore that. And the funny thing is, like, people on the left, they have this concept of inherited trauma. And I always tell people, wherever you're from, it's like just roll with that. You've got to, if you're Irish or Eastern European or wherever you're from, it's like you have also inherited trauma. Like, all this stuff works two ways. If you believe it, it's true. Because if you feel it, it's true. Okay, so even when they show the girl's face and the art is horrible, at least they gave the English girl tits, and the Indian girl it looks like a transgender individual. But the facial expressions are horrible. She's like, let me get to the second one. Like, this is what you want. This is your. It looks like an Indian man beating up an English woman. So, like, you guys are doing your own little dog whistling here. It's a completely flat-chested Indian man who's abusing a woman. The left has, I want to say, come full circle, but it's not like the right favors abusing women. This is a weird. The left has gotten into these weird areas. This guy says every time they do something like this, they admit to the world that there's no real woman of Indian, African, Asian ancestry in Britain worth writing about, or else they're too lazy to find a real one. Okay, I think a good point, but I'm going to sidestep that point. Why not write about English people and English stories? If you want to write about Indians or Africans or Asians, go set them in those lands and write them over there. Set them in Africa, like Henry Rider Haggard had stories set in Africa, and they were great. They're great stories, and they had African protagonists and antagonists, and he was just kind of a view onto the world, and he didn't subject him to the bigotry of lowered expectations, and he didn't Make them purse puppies. They were real three-dimensional characters. And if you want to read like some of the best fictional action adventure, Henry Rider Haggard, all his books are available online for free. You can download them for various, just Google search, download H.R. Haggard EPUB or Moby, and you'll come up with all his stuff. Some of the books were what Indiana Jones and Temple of Doom was kind of loosely based on, or the movies that Indiana Jones was based on were based on this book, and a lot of other books were based on oh god, what's that one, the Queen Sheba, the Search for Gold, or Sheba's, all the kind of stuff. I'm drawing up because now I'm under pressure. I can't think of the names of the books. I've read all those books like a dozen times. They're fan-freaking-tastic. My point is that, yes, if you're in England, tell the English story. You don't have to apologize for being English. You don't have to apologize for loving that. I'm not English, but England accomplished amazing, amazing things. You can be proud of that. And, like, yeah, they did bad things too, but, like, you didn't do those bad things. And the thing is, every country, every group of people on Earth did bad things and good things. They just did things. They were just living as people. Like, African nations were constantly invading each other, but they were doing it with sticks. And so, like, the consequences are going to be more localized when they're just, like, one tribe will just go to another tribe, murder all the men and children, and take all the women. And that's like, that never gets written down because they didn't know how to write. So it's like you'd have some Dutch who would go and like tell stories about it, and it's like that's the history you have, or oral history. It's like people always seem to forget this. It's like people are just people all over the world. So anyway, like, comment, subscribe, go to Odysee and BitChute. I am just loving Odysee lately.